We're on to season 3 after year 2 failed to see a playoff appearance. Injuries derailed the team, and my hesitation to trade for Mark Brunell before the trade deadline may have stopped us from being a 10-win team. We'll see if keeping that first and second round pick will pay dividends for us, or I'll regret not pulling the trigger again this season. This year, our net income wasn't as high, which was understandable. It only makes sense considering we lost all our fan support by week 13. That's a little harsh, but okay. Like, Raider fans have no patience for my shit. Now that I think about it, it might have been when I put in the rookie. Don't worry, Raider fans, you guys are going to get cup holders next season. You're welcome. I also decided to test out the advertisement just to kind of see if it would help build our revenue, since our attendance did get cut in half by the back end of the season. Bill Callahan is entering the final year of his contract. He had a 7-9 season to follow up his undefeated season, but his excuse, which I allow, is that injuries really screwed up the year. Unless year 3 is a 1-win season, expect him back. We don't currently have an offensive coordinator under contract. We had signed Ed West last season to a 1-year deal, but with how poor the offense performed, I'm going to look for a new coordinator. Chuck Bresnahan is going into the final year of his contract as well. The defense has been a top 3 team the past 2 seasons, so I'm surprised that nobody wants to hire him as a coach. If he doesn't get a head coaching offer next season, I'll be sure to re-sign him. We do need a special teams coordinator. Our previous one, which was Casula, wasn't terrible, but he got an offer from the 49ers, and I did say I was going to move on from him, so I looked into McDuff, who was the 49ers' previous special teams coordinator. I gave him an offer, and we ended up hiring Duffman. He's a big improvement. I wonder why the 49ers downgraded. Now, there were a lot of options for offensive coordinator, but many of them were head coaches that had their contracts expire. Mike Martz, Dick Vermeil, and Jim Fossil were all coaches that I was interested in bringing as a coordinator, but for the most part, they weren't fired for doing a bad job. It didn't make any sense for them to take a lesser job. There was someone who I thought was a very well-rounded offensive coordinator, Tom Moore. His record with the Indianapolis Colts doesn't really inspire hope, but that just means we can hire him for a discount. We really didn't get a discount since we had to outbid Cincinnati, but we eventually got our guy. For those interested to see how our former coordinator was doing, Trestman ended up going 8-8 his first year with the Buffalo Bills. Not bad for a first-time coach, and hey, better than us. Oh, and before we move on to the retirement, I had to upgrade our training staff to the best available one. There were too many injuries last season for us to just ignore. Now on to the retirements, and we only had 3 retirements, which means Mazzarella Perella, Gardner, and Kennedy are coming back for another season, which makes not trading for Brunell hurt even more, because that means we could have had a potential 2 seasons of a complete team for a deep playoff run. Oronde Gadsden is retiring. He was a 1-year rental until we can find a replacement player. It isn't shocking, and he did his job. Obligatory Gadsden catch. I think we all figured Tyrone Wheatley was going to retire. He wasn't producing anymore, and in his final season, he was relegated to 3rd on the depth. Hardly even saw the field when Gardner went down, and I also wanted to show some highlights of Wheatley, but this tackle is too good. Finally, Zach Crockett. I wasn't even planning on him to retire, but it's not like fullbacks are used much in this offense. For those who don't know Crockett, this video from Jaguar Gator 9 goes over Crockett's most important game in his career. I do want to point out before moving on that career-ending injuries are also in this game, so that's something I'm going to have to keep in mind if an injury happens. Now we're moving on to the re-signing period. We have 2 more holdouts, Gibson, which is rightfully deserved, but Dana Stubblefield decided after getting a new contract last season that he wanted another one this season, and I might end up trying to trade him. At quarterback, we have the booty man who needs a new contract. He did improve somehow, and I don't plan on bringing him back. Well, unless we can't find a replacement in the draft. Yes, I do plan on drafting another quarterback because Nelson was terrible and the fans hated him. At left guard, we have Stinchcomb, who needs a new contract, and he has regressed hard. It's strange to think that he held down the right tackle position when Kennedy was injured and helped us go undefeated. I'm not bringing him back. At right defensive end, we have Willie McGinnis, who needs a contract. We have 3 guys behind him who are young and ready to go, but I have no trust in any of them. I'm going to hold off on a contract for McGinnis for now, since we kind of have to focus on defensive tackle. Obviously, Stubblefield is holding out, but Coleman needs a new contract. There's no hesitation here. He's getting another one. Also, Ioane will now be back. That means Coleman and Mazzarella Perella will be our defensive tackles. Therefore, we have a hole at defensive end. McGinnis will be getting that new contract to fill the void for this season, and I'm going to start looking for trade offers for Stubblefield. At cornerback, we have Shaw in need of a new contract. He's over 30, and I feel like it might be better to just move on and let Nnamdi Asamoah take over that nickel position. He'll be learning from Buchanan and of course Charles Woodson, who is going to get a new contract with the team. I did briefly talk about how Gibson was holding out. Remember when I said he was the worst player in our secondary? Well, he's getting a new contract. Lastly, Janikowski is in need of a new contract. Another no-brainer. He's coming back. We didn't have a lot of players this season who needed new contracts, and other than Shaw and Stinchcomb, I don't think we're going to miss the players we let go. I still have one thing left to do, and that is to trade Stubblefield. His cap hit is 2.3 and 2.8 the next year, which I don't think is unreasonable, but he's holding out for more. The problem is he has little to no value. I'm not going to trade him away for peanuts, so for now I'm going to stow him away and hope I can trade him before the trade deadline this coming season. We're now moving on to the NFL draft. This season we have the 12th overall pick, and there sits the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft class, Mark McGrath and Ron Douglas. One has an amazing arm and the other has amazing accuracy, and last season the scouting felt a bit off, but once again I'm going to foolishly trust it. I'm going to go with Douglas. His arm power isn't bad at all and it can be developed, but I'm really excited about his accuracy. This is a West Coast offense that relies mostly on timing and accuracy, so this really pleases me. I'm pleased. I did see where McGrath was drafted and he was selected by the Miami Dolphins 5 picks later. He has a cannon for an arm, but his accuracy is 10 points lower than Douglas. I still think I made the right choice, as I think Douglas can contribute to the offense immediately compared to McGrath. Last draft, all the receivers were taken early. This year, I do not want to miss out on a potential stud player, so I drafted Melvin Robinson in the 2nd round. I admit it was a reach, but we needed a player to replace Gadsden, and this is the guy. He has decent speed, really good agility, and okay hands. His awareness is extremely low, but hopefully we can build that up with game experience. In the 3rd round, I decided to go to Wheatley's replacement, drafted Marvin Henley. Drafting a running back has been long overdue. Gardner isn't going to stay on this team forever, even if it looks like he could. Injuries might slow him down this season. Henley by no means is fast, but he does have some power. It could be a good 1-2 punch with Vargas. At this point in the draft, depth players are what I like to select. We let Stinchcomb walk. This will be his replacement. Brett Harris is a very balanced guard. I prefer these players over those who are only good at one particular thing. I think he'll be decent enough as a backup, but let's hope we don't have to thrust any of these rookies into a game yet. I completely forgot that Crockett retired and drafted his replacement in the 5th round. Cedric Erickson, he doesn't look good, but his overall is a 64, so I'll take it. I also remembered that I let Shaw go and decided to draft his replacement as well in the 6th round. He's fast. I mean, takes him a while to get to top gear, but he's fast. There is no doubt in my mind he's going to be last on the depth chart. I do like his speed and agility, he's just not a very smart cookie. For the final pick, we didn't have any more holes to fill, so I decided to draft a center. Ernie Brown isn't the strongest player, but he has heart. I do think center is a weak spot for this team. Robbins and Drew are both older players. I need to prepare for their regression or retirement. Brown is in good position to learn and just get better to eventually replace them. We're now off to free agency, and once again, another bad year for signings. There's not really anyone I was interested in besides Ken Lucas. The only reason I was interested in him was because it was a younger upgrade over Shaw, but I couldn't even give him an offer since I was already at the roster cap of 55 players. I didn't feel like releasing anyone, and since I really wasn't interested in anyone else in free agency, I ended up skipping it. One of these years, there's going to be a big name here. That means we're now at the roster for this season. Let's get straight to the elite players, and leading the class this season is Shane Lechler. There's not much I can say about a punter other than he punts. I do hope that he punts less this season because it means the offense is actually, working. Charles Woodson improved slightly, and we're now in the prime of his career. We need to capitalize on this and hopefully make a playoff push this season. Seabass is probably one of the best kickers in the NFL at this point, and I know we lost the game with him, but imagine if we didn't have him. He's only getting better with time. Eric Barden continues to improve. I've said it before, but this defense is the strength of this team at this point. They're not getting any younger. They're still pretty young though. I feel like I'm panicking and wasting their youth without Brunell. We got a new young guy on here, Napoleon Harris. I'm surprised he's even on here with his injury from last season, but I shouldn't be complaining. The more elite players, the better, especially on defense. But can we get an offensive player on here, please? I would have preferred a playmaker, but I'll take it. This has to be Kennedy's final season with the team. I can't see any way he doesn't retire after this season, and we're going to waste it if we don't make a deep playoff push. Roderick Coleman is the final elite player for this season. I'm really loving this defense right now, but we need to get this offense going if we're going to capitalize on it. Unless we're going for the Baltimore Ravens defense wins championships vibes. Marcus Tuiasosopo continues to lead the quarterback group for the second straight season, but it seems to me that he has hit his ceiling. To be fair, he wasn't exactly amazing last year either. I think I'm at a point where I would rather move on and start the rookie Douglas. We do have a new offensive coordinator. Maybe he can work his magic, and in the worst case scenario, we have two mid backups, so the drop off wouldn't be terrible in case I change my mind like last season. Looks like the injury to Gardner has slowed him down. He's still a good running back, but I think this will be his final season. I do like that his rating dropped a lot after an injury. You see it happen all the time in the NFL. Older players get hurt and they're never who they were before, but they're still good enough. Plus, it makes me have to prepare for the following season differently. Fargus also looks like he's hit his full potential. I'm sure he can get better, but it might be a smarter idea to give all the spare reps to Henley. Looks like fullbacks don't have a long lifespan in this game. I don't think this team uses them that much, but even if you hardly use them, it'd be nice if you have a good one when you have to use them. This one is not a good one, but I don't think that'll have a huge impact. Our offense was so bad last season with Marcus Tuiasosopo that both Porter and White regressed back to the mean. I think it's safe to say that they both don't want him to start this season, and I'm going to have to look into finding another good wide receiver. Porter can only do so much, and so far White has proven that he's a solid number 3, but we don't have a true number 1 receiver on the team. Maybe Porter will take that leap this season, and Robinson, the rookie we drafted, can improve enough to take over the number 2. As of right now, it's looking like it might be another rough season here. Roland Williams continues to get worse and worse each season, but that's okay okay because he's sacrificing his blood so that Jolly can continue to improve. He's been a very solid tight end for the team. Garner may be the check down king, but Jolly is the safety valve that anyone would love to have on their team. There was a slight regression at left tackle, but nothing to get too worried about with Sims. I do think Walker has cemented his case to be the starting right tackle when Kennedy retires. Also, holy heck, I forgot how strong Douglas was. 97 strength is insane. He has all the tools, but just doesn't know how to use them yet. He's also slow as shit. I thought Middleton was going to jump into the elite list along with Sims, but they've both hit a wall, which is fine because they're still extremely good players. I know it says Stinchcomb was a 79, but in the offseason he was a 70, and I'm hoping that Harris can eventually be better than that in 2 to 3 years. Robbins will continue to be the starting center this season. I googled him and he has an extremely tragic NFL story. The year they went to the Super Bowl, he had a mental breakdown, didn't show up to the game, and was in a different country completely because he thought they had already won the Super Bowl. Since then, he's just had problem after problem. It's quite sad reading that. Collins also didn't make it into elite territory. He's really close, but the terrible offense from last season really stunted the growth of almost everyone on this team. I think we still have a very solid offensive line, but the only thing holding us back has to be the quarterback play. We already talked about Kennedy. He's probably on his last year in the NFL. It sucks because I think with Brunell, we could have gotten him and Gardner another ring. Instead, he's wasting the twilight of his career on a team experimenting with young quarterbacks. Well, it looks like number 98 is going to be a stud. He had a really good season last year. Hopefully he can continue it this season. This is really the only weak spot on this defensive line, and I'd argue if it really is a weak spot at all. We signed Willie McGinnis mid-season last year and he did well. It looks like he's sucking up the youth from the backup in order to return to form. He's clearly not the long-term solution, but a solution until we can find a replacement in the draft or free agency. I think this will also be the final season for Mozzarella Perella and possibly Stubblefield. It'd be nice to get something for him since he's holding out still. I'll be looking for trade partners after the preseason, hoping for a team to have a major injury and trade with them. Coleman is obviously the leader of this defensive line. At left outside linebacker, Tim Johnson is the only true linebacker in the position. Randy Rogers will continue to be the starter, but Johnson has come a long way since the start of the series. I haven't been impressed with the numbers that Napoleon Harris has put up the past 2 seasons, but numbers only tell half a story, and he's clearly the most talented player in the position. Smith also showed last season that if he has to step up and play, he can step up and play. I'm happy with this group. At right outside linebacker, Eric Barden is the starter. He's been runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year for back-to-back seasons. Maybe this is the year he wins it. Randy Rogers also improved drastically since last season. He's going to be the left outside linebacker. Maybe next season we can see him in the 80s. At cornerback, we still have Woodson and Buchanan as the starters. I give it another season and we'll probably have 2 elite corners, which I'm really happy about. I just hope we're not wasting these prime years on a subpar quarterback. Why did Rich Gannon have to be so old? Nnamdi Asomugha is slowly improving, while Kelly might be the worst signing I've had so far. He's regressed hard on a defense that's been really good. That speaks volumes on how bad Kelly is. One of my favorite things about this game is being able to sit rookies behind veterans and still have them improve. Yeah, Seahorn is our starter. Yeah, he's the best player at free safety, but he's going to retire soon and the backup is learning and improving, and I love it. Remember when I said Gibson was the worst player in our secondary? Also, another backup is improving. It's nice to see the rookies learning from the veterans on the team. Lastly, Seabass is the kicker, Leckler the punter. Before we move on to the regular season, there were a few injuries during the preseason. Jerry Porter will be out with a sprained shoulder for 2 weeks, but who knows when he'll be fully healthy. Injuries tend to linger on in this game, while True, the backup center, has a sprained ankle. He'll be fine for the most part. This does mean our rookie second round pick Melvin Robinson will get an opportunity to shine in the season opener against the San Diego Chargers. We have yet to lose a game to the Chargers in this series. It's surprising, really. Another surprise, Tuiasosopo is still getting playing time. Douglas wasn't able to finish the game, and I don't want to rely on Tuiasosopo for the rest of the season. Thankfully, he was only injured for this game. Charlie Gardner is beginning to show his age on the field, while Des White finally had his big game as a Raider. Melvin Robinson also did as well as you can ask a rookie to do when thrown into the game. There was a minor injury. I say minor because Mozzarella Perella will be out for only a week. The problem is we can't play the next game with only one active defensive tackle. Stubblefield is still holding out, and I don't want to cut someone just to fill out that spot that we already have on the team, which means I caved and gave Stubblefield a new contract. Now we can move on to week 2, our home opener against the Dallas Cowboys.
But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
I can't believe we gave up 18 points in the fourth quarter. This was another game where Douglas couldn't finish it, and guess who threw a pick 6? That's right, Tuiasosopo. If your quarterback can't stay on the field, then he can't win you games. I can't believe how brittle he is. It's a bummer too, because he was having a pretty good game overall. Garner wasn't able to finish the game either, and Robinson had a nice bounce back game. Overall, if Douglas doesn't miss the final quarter, I think we win this one. Week 3 is a Super Bowl rematch against the New York Giants. This team is not good in the fourth quarter at the moment, and it would also be the 3rd straight game that Douglas wasn't able to finish. While Tuiasosopo threw an interception in the limited time that he had in the game, I thought we hired a medical staff to stop this from happening. Charlie Gardner isn't helping with his lack of explosive plays on the ground. You know, right when we're about to get a fully healthy Jerry Porter, Des White had to go crack his foot. There's not been a lot of injuries so far, but it's been inconvenient for sure. Not like it matters. We're playing the Chargers next. That's like a guaranteed win to get back to 500. Down 10-0 in the first half and scored 21 unanswered points. Surprise, surprise. Douglas played this one all the way through. When healthy, I think he can be the solution to our quarterback woes. I do still wish Gardner was better on the ground, but he makes up for it as a receiving threat, while Jerry Porter finally got some playing time this season. He's still on the injury report for the most part, but he's ready to go, and the new player on here is Nnamdi Asomugha, but only for a week. We now take on the Chiefs for sole ownership of the division. It seems like we just implode for one quarter each game, and we can never recover. That happened here in the second quarter. Douglas had a rough game, giving up a pick 6, but he's a rookie. There's going to be growing pains, and this was one of them. It's a bummer too. Now that Porter was near 100%, he went off and showed why he should be the number 1 on this team. But number 1s win you games. We now take on a very good Baltimore team, and when you look back at the teams we've beaten so far this season, we beat San Diego twice. I'll tell you, whenever we need to be clutch, we just collapse. This team's missing something, and it's not turning the ball over. Another rough game for Douglas. The only positive I can say about him right now is that he's healthy and he's scoring. The ground game is still an issue. Douglas has fumbling problems. Jerry Porter went off again. Imagine if we had a decent player opposite of him. You know, someone like Des White. We had a bye week. We're 2-4. We're not a good team, and now we have a rematch against the Chiefs, and it's not looking good. Have I mentioned how many times we lost the game because we just imploded for one quarter? Douglas didn't even have a terrible performance. The running game is still very mid, and Robinson had a decent game. I don't really understand how we lost this one. We're 2-5. Season looks like it's over, and at this point I have to look into next season as a tank year and develop younger talent. Before we do that, we have to take on the Broncos. Well, it wasn't pretty. but we won. I found it interesting that Leckler was kicking field goals. I don't know if that's a glitch or something. Douglas had a mid-game, but finally the running game was able to back him up for once. Did you notice he had 3 fumbles? It also looks like Melvin Robinson is becoming a solid number 2 on this team in White's absence. How the heck does Janikowski get injured? He's our kicker. Our defensive end, number 98, is also out. Middleton was banged up too. We won 1 game and we had to sacrifice 4 players to do so. I'd rather not win any more games then. I mentioned we had hit the 55 player cap, so I had to release someone. Grant was unfortunately the person that got cut. That allowed us to go to free agency to get a backup kicker. I ended up signing Jay Feely. We have yet to beat a team with a winning record, and we're now taking on the 4-4 Eagles, so, well, there's a chance. The defense shut out the Eagles. Is this the first time we've done this in this series? I can't remember, but this defense continues to carry this team to wins, and Douglas hasn't been having the most impressive stretch of games right now. The running game was also non-existent. This defense really did carry us to a win this game. We were just about to get a healthy Des White soon, and now Marvin Robinson has an injury. For crying out loud, this game is laughing at me. Week 11, and this is possibly the most important matchup all season long. The first quarterback in the draft against the second quarterback taken in the draft. It wasn't even close. I would say that we proved our point in selecting the right guy, but Douglas didn't even have a great game. Some might say a bad one. While the Dolphins didn't have much success with McGrath or any other quarterbacks, the running game was awful too. Another game where the defense helped the offense a lot more than the numbers say. They created 5 turnovers to give Oakland their 5th win of the season. We have 55 players on the team and they all seem like they're on here. These injuries are happening at the worst times too. Hopefully we can get healthy enough to push for the division title soon. We're now taking on the Broncos. We can't lose to them. A little closer than I wanted it to be, but we were down 13-0 and came back to win. It's about time we were able to do that. Now do it against a good team, please. Douglas had a decent enough game. Running game has been terrible this entire season besides a game or 2, while Porter continues to prove his value on this team. Jolly as well. What the heck is in the Oakland water that this team is drinking? It's making them all brittle. Mozzarella is back on the injury list. We're 6-5, above 500 for the first time this season. The injury list is the longest it's been all season long, and we're now facing our former coordinator in Trustman, who's having a good season so far. Well, looks like the student has surpassed the master. Barely. It wasn't the most exciting game. The defense did a great job against Bledsoe. Douglas did well enough. Running game is still not good. More importantly, Jay Feely missed 2 field goals. Who knew that these injuries were going to cost this team at some point this season? We're getting healthier, but we're clearly missing Janikowski the most. If we can get into the playoffs, he might be able to come back. As of right now, to get into the playoffs, we need to take care of our games this week against a potential playoff team, the Jets. Well, the defense tried, but at some point or another, they are going to have one of these games. Douglas had a rough one too. Gardner had a better game. These are the weeks where I think, would Brunell have been a better option than Douglas? I'm never going to let it go. We now take on a 9-win team. This is a rough 3 weeks. I don't know how, but we managed to win this game. We're back to 500 with a 7-7 record. Douglas had his best performance of the season, basically telling me to shut up about Brunell. The running game was decent again. While Porter and White were finally unleashed, it's hard to believe that it took 14 weeks before both of them had a good game at the same time. We can't win the division since we lost both games to Kansas City, but we could try to get a winning record and a playoff spot. Unfortunately, like last season, we're gonna need a lot of help. We're also at our healthiest since the start of the season, but first and foremost, we we need to handle our own business against another potential playoff team. Should have traded for Brunell. Alright, I'm overreacting. Injuries kind of screwed us early. We lost a game due to Tui Asisopo. Earlier, we had a replacement kicker miss a game winner. We beat ourselves pretty hard, and it's no nut November, so that shouldn't be happening. This was a lost season, and it ended when we lost to the Bills, not the Colts. There you go. We are technically eliminated from the playoffs. The final game of the year means nothing. It is a tuck roll rematch though. Even in the rematch, we lost. Also, should I be concerned that the defense has been giving up a lot of points the past 2 games? Douglas had a subpar game. Garner was injured during this game, which meant Henley, the rookie, took most of the carries, and he doesn't look great. Jerry Porter doing what Jerry Porter does, and at the end of the season, 7-9 again, collapsed at the beginning of the season, and at the end, can't start 2-5 and finish 1-4 and expect to make the playoffs. Also, Charlie Gardner is definitely not coming back. He's probably thinking, I came back for this, while Napoleon Harris broke his jaw. These injuries are rough. I'm honestly surprised we were healthy that undefeated season. I don't think I can go 19-0 again with that roster, even if I tried. Now, I know I joked around about Brunell, but I do think in hindsight, with all the injuries, it was a good idea not to trade for him. I'm happy that we drafted Douglas with the hope that he can develop, and we can be competitive in year 4 or 5. Tui Asisopo, on the other hand, well, I'm glad to move on from him, at least as a starter. I think he has value as a backup. Obviously, it wasn't a great year for Ron Douglas, but overall, much better than Tui Asisopo's first year as starter, and the argument could be made that he had a worse roster to work with too. Maybe hiring more as the offensive coordinator helped this offense be less bad than it did with Ed West last year. The running game was terrible. Not much else to say. Charlie Gardner is most likely not returning after his injury, and he's been on a decline since that breakout season. And what sucks about that is the decline has been due to injury and not age. Marvin Henley was bad, like really bad, like less than 3 yards to carry bad. I don't know if I want to move forward with him as the starter next year. I mean, I drafted a quarterback in the first round in back-to-back seasons. I'm not afraid to draft a running back high next year. I wanted to point this out. I just realized how bad Douglas was fumbling the ball. He led the league in fumbles. We might have lost a few games due to that too. Should have traded for Brunell. Receiving this year was much better in my opinion. Everyone was used on offense. Jerry Porter missed 2 games this season and was on pace for 1,000 yards had he played in those games. He also had a few big games too. I expect him to improve going into next season. Doug Jolly has been consistently the best player on the team, and he's been doing it quietly. He was good with Gannon, with Tui Asisopo, and now with Douglas. He's the quarterback's best friend. I have high hopes for Melvin Robinson. Came in for an injured Porter and White, then got injured himself. He was a decent replacement. Hopefully in a year or 2 he can be a solid starter. I don't see Des White returning to the team after his contract expires, but while we have him, he can be a stopgap player until Robinson can take over. I still think White has excellent value to the team. Even missing half the season, he put up some really good numbers. The sacks each season are getting worse, but again, we have a rookie quarterback starting this season. Could be the reason why it's so high. We'll have to wait and find out till next season. Eric Barden led the team in tackles for the 3rd straight season, and the dude is just a straight up baller. Like, he doesn't have that dog in him, he has a Raider in him. Absolutely insane, and wouldn't be surprised if he wins Defensive Player of the Year this season. Surprisingly, the 2 players behind him in sacks are his fellow linebackers Randy Rogers and Napoleon Harris. I'm I'm very happy with Randy Rogers. Drafted him in the second round last season. He's been nothing but productive, getting better in the second season with the team, and he's been a great replacement for Romanowski. Napoleon Harris played the entire season up until the final week when he broke his jaw. I think this is his first season where I really thought he played up to his potential. The defense has been the best part about this team. We need to hurry up and get the offense in check. Dana Stubblefield was the best defensive lineman this season for the team in terms of sacks, gathering 7 of them. I held out on his holdout, but injuries forced me to give in, and I'm really not that mad about it. Now, for interceptions, Charles Woodson went off, 7 interceptions this season, and by far he's made his own island on this team. We legit are wasting the prime years of our defense, aren't we? I don't know how a kicker gets injured, but if Janikowski stays healthy, we probably win a few more games this season. Shane Leckler didn't make the Pro Bowl this season, which is strange to me because he's been consistent and on par with last year. Eric Barden was 4th for AFC MVP. Insane that a linebacker almost won that award. What makes it worse? For the 3rd straight year, Barden was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. It's ridiculous. Even best linebacker in his best season ever, he still can't win that award. What a shame. On the bright side, Ron Douglas won AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year, outperforming McGrath. For that honor, guess who won Coach of the Year? Trustman. We really let our entire offense fall apart just so we can let this man coach. Was the sacrifice worth it? His team did beat the Titans to go to the conference championship game where they would take on the Cincinnati Bengals, but the student has not yet surpassed the master, failing to win and missing out on the Super Bowl. We've gone 19-0, 7-9, and 7-9, and we need to get over that hump soon, or else I might just blow up the team and do a true rebuild.